She was days away from cashing a six-figure bonus until her smug boss killed it with a single stroke of his pen. But what he didn't know was she'd spent years building an invisible empire he could never control. By the time he realized, she was already sliding into the boardroom chair he thought would always be his. Wait until you see exactly how she turned his arrogance into her revenge. The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee, the subject line was innocuous enough. Q4 compensation review, updated terms, but my stomach dropped the moment I opened it. Gone. My six-figure bonus, the one I'd been promised for keeping our top-tier clients from jumping ship during the worst market downturn in a decade, had vanished like smoke. In its place was corporate doublespeak about adjusted performance metrics and realigned objectives. I read it 3 times, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Then I saw it, buried in the CC line, Lawrence Beck. Of course, I'm Cassidy Warren, and for the past 7 years, I've been the one thing standing between RX partners and complete client exodus, while our competitors poached talent and our market share bled out. I held the line, 34 years old, no MBA from Harvard, no family connections, just an uncanny ability to make billionaire clients feel heard in a world where everyone else saw them as walking commission checks. Beck had been circling me like a vulture for months, senior vice president of client relations, my direct supervisor, and a man who'd never met a spreadsheet he couldn't manipulate or a colleague he couldn't undermine. He wore his insecurity like expensive cologne. You could smell it the moment he walked into a room. Cassidy, a moment. His voice slithered through my office door 20 minutes after the email landed. He didn't wait for an answer, just walked in with that practiced smile that never reached his eyes. "I assume you've reviewed the compensation adjustments," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk like he owned it. Hell, like he owned me. "You mean the part where my bonus disappeared?" I kept my voice level, professional. Never let them see you bleed, first rule of corporate warfare. The metrics were recalibrated based on company-wide performance standards. He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous tell I'd catalogued months ago. "Your client retention numbers, while admirable, didn't account for revenue per client ratios. I'm afraid you fell short." Bullshit. I'd exceeded every metric by double digits, but arguing would be pointless. He'd already rewritten history. "I see," I said instead, leaning back in my chair. "And I suppose this has nothing to do with the Barrett Industries renewal." His eye twitched, just barely, but I caught it. Barrett Industries, our second largest client, worth $50 million annually. They'd specifically requested I lead their account review next month. Beck had been trying to muscle his way into that meeting for weeks, desperate to claim credit for a renewal I'd already secured through 2 years of relationship building. "This is purely about standardized performance evaluations," he said, standing abruptly. "I trust you'll maintain your usual professionalism during this transition period." Transition period. The words hung in the air like a threat. After he left, I sat in the silence of my office, watching the sunrise paint the Los Angeles skyline gold. 7 years of 60-hour weeks. 7 years of memorizing the names of clients' children, their secretaries, their mistresses. 7 years of being the only person who knew that Marcus Chen preferred his contracts reviewed on Thursday mornings because that's when his anxiety medication worked best, or that Patricia Holbrook only made major decisions after consulting her astrologer. They thought data lived in spreadsheets and CRM systems. They had no idea the real intelligence existed in the space between numbers, in knowing that Robert Garrison's daughter was struggling at Princeton, or that Jennifer Wu was considering early retirement after her brother's heart attack. I'd built an empire of relationships, one conversation at a time. Beck wanted to steal it, thinking he could simply take over my accounts and my bonus. He saw clients as entries in a database. He had no idea they were people who trusted me with their fears. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen at Barrett Industries. "Heard some concerning rumors about restructuring at RX. Should I be worried?" The game had begun, and Beck had just made his first mistake. He'd attacked someone who knew that in the client relations business, loyalty wasn't bought with numbers. It was earned with memory. I spent the next 3 days moving like a ghost through RX's gleaming halls, collecting evidence with the patience of someone who'd learned that revenge, like client relationships, required meticulous cultivation. Beck's first mistake was underestimating how much access I truly had. While he focused on controlling the official channels, the CRM systems, the reporting structures, the formal meetings I operated in the shadows, he didn't even know existed. Thursday evening, I found what I needed. Beck had grown careless, leaving his office unlocked during a board dinner. His computer was protected, but the physical files he thought were secure told a different story. Invoices with suspicious adjustments. Emails printed and annotated by hand, discussing consultant fees with our competitor. Meridian Group. The kind of fees that looked legitimate on paper but smelled like kickbacks to anyone who knew where to look. But I didn't stop there. Evidence was just ammunition. The real weapon was something Beck could never steal: the invisible empire I'd built over 7 years. That weekend, I broke my own rules. I reached out to clients personally, something RX's compliance department would have frowned upon, but these weren't just clients anymore. They were allies. "Patricia," I said, nursing a glass of wine in my apartment as I made the first call. "I need to share something with you, off the record." Patricia Holbrook controlled a $200 million portfolio. She also despised corporate politics, having been burned by it during her own rise through Silicon Valley's boys' club. "Cassidy, darling, you sound troubled." Her voice carried that maternal concern she reserved for the few people she actually respected. "What's that bastard Beck done now?" By Sunday night, I'd had similar conversations with 12 key clients. Not once did I ask them to take action. I simply shared my concerns about RX's future direction, about the new leadership philosophy that prioritized quick profits over long-term relationships. I mentioned, almost casually, that I might not be there much longer to protect their interests. The response was immediate and visceral. "Absolutely not," Robert Garrison had practically shouted through the phone. "You're the only reason I haven't moved to Meridian already. If you're gone, so am I." Jennifer Wu was more calculating. "Send me the termination date if it happens. My contract has a 30-day out clause for material changes in account management. Losing you definitely qualifies." But it was Marcus Barrett who surprised me most. The CEO of Barrett Industries, typically reserved and analytical, had gone quiet for a long moment before speaking. "Cassidy, do you remember what you told me when my daughter was diagnosed with lupus? You said, 'The numbers will be here tomorrow, but your family needs you today.' You held our account steady while I spent 3 months at her bedside. That's not something I forget." "Marcus, You're not asking for anything. That's precisely why you're going to get everything. Send me Beck's direct line. It's time he and I had a conversation about the future of our partnership." Monday morning arrived with the kind of Santa Ana winds that made Los Angeles feel electric with possibility. I arrived early, as always. But this time I wasn't alone. My assistant, Maria, who'd been Beck's secretary before requesting a transfer, was waiting by my office. "He knows something's happening," she whispered, glancing nervously down the hall. "He's been making calls all morning, and he's scheduled an emergency meeting with compliance for this afternoon." "About me?" She nodded. "He's claiming you've been sharing confidential client information with competitors. Says he has evidence of unauthorized communications." Of course, Beck's second mistake, thinking he was the only one who could play dirty. "Maria," I said calmly, unlocking my office door. "Remember those consultant invoices you helped him process last quarter, the ones for Meridian Group?" Her eyes widened. "I knew those looked wrong, but he said they were approved by nobody. He forged the approval codes. I have copies of the originals." I smiled at her shocked expression. "Coffee. This is going to be an interesting day." By noon, the first dominoes had fallen. 3 separate clients had called Beck directly, expressing concerns about their account management. Jennifer Wu had gone a step further, sending a formal notice of potential contract termination to our legal department. I watched from my office window as Beck stalked across the executive floor. His face flushed, his phone pressed against his ear. He was scrambling now, trying to contain a fire he didn't understand. The real beauty was that everything my clients were doing was completely legal, completely within their rights. They weren't colluding or violating any agreements. They were simply exercising their prerogative to choose who managed their money, and they were choosing me. The compliance meeting was set for 2 p.m. Beck had assembled his War Council HR, legal, and 2 senior partners who'd always backed his plays. I could see them gathering in the glass-walled conference room, Beck gesturing animatedly with a stack of papers. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Holbrook. "Check your email. You'll want to see this before your lynching." The email contained a single PDF, a letter on Barrett Industries letterhead, addressed to Orex's board of directors. Marcus Barrett hadn't just called Beck. He'd gone nuclear. "Effective immediately. Barrett Industries is placing our partnership with RX Partners under review. This decision is contingent upon the continued employment and account management of Ms. Cassidy Warren. Any alteration to her status will result in immediate contract termination." The letter was copied to every board member, the CEO, and in a touch of pure corporate savagery, several key shareholders. By 2:15, the compliance meeting had turned into a different kind of gathering. I watched through the glass as Beck's confident presentation dissolved into panicked defense. The senior partners who'd entered as his allies were now leaning away from him, their body language screaming distance. Then came the knock on my door. "Ms. Warren, the board would like to see you." The boardroom smelled like leather and fear. 8 faces turned to me as I entered, including our CEO, James Morrison, whose expression could have curdled milk. "Sit," Morrison commanded, gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table. "We have a situation." "I'm aware," I said, taking my seat with deliberate calm. "In the past 2 hours," Morrison continued, "we've received formal notices from 4 of our largest clients threatening to terminate nearly $500 million in assets under management. All of them cite you as the sole reason they remain with RX." He leaned forward. "Care to explain?" "I've maintained strong client relationships," I said simply. "When those clients heard rumors about internal restructuring that might affect their account management, they expressed concerns. I believe that's their prerogative." "Did you encourage this action?" This from Sandra Liu, our chief legal officer. "I informed certain clients that I might not be available to manage their accounts in the future. I thought transparency was appropriate, given our fiduciary obligations." Morrison's jaw tightened. "And the allegations Mr. Beck has raised about unauthorized communications." This was my moment. I reached into my portfolio and withdrew a neat stack of documents. "Before we discuss Mr. Beck's allegations, the board should be aware of some concerning discoveries regarding consultant payments to Meridian Group." The room went still. I laid out the evidence methodically: invoices, emails, forged approval codes, each page another nail in Beck's professional coffin. "These payments," I continued, "totaling nearly $300,000 over 6 months, appear to coincide with Meridian's successful poaching of 3 of our mid-tier clients. Clients whose confidential strategy documents were accessed exclusively by Mr. Beck in the weeks before their departure. These are baseless accusations." Beck burst through the boardroom doors, his face mottled with rage. Security moved to intercept him, but Morrison waved them off. "Lawrence," Morrison's voice could have frozen hell, "you weren't invited to this meeting." "She's destroying everything." Beck pointed at me, spittle flying. "She's turned our clients against us. She's the only reason we still have clients." Morrison cut him off. "Sit down and shut up, or I'll have security escort you out." Beck collapsed into a chair, his chest heaving. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "The evidence speaks for itself," I said quietly. "But if the board needs additional confirmation, I suggest we ask why Mr. Beck was so eager to eliminate my bonus and remove me from client-facing roles. Perhaps it's connected to the consultant who's been promising Meridian a major acquisition from RX's client base." Sandra Liu was already typing on her laptop, her expression growing darker by the second. "James, we need to launch a formal investigation immediately, if even half of this is true." "It's all fabricated." Beck's voice cracked. "She's setting me up because I adjusted her compensation. This is revenge." "No," I interrupted, meeting his wild eyes. "This is consequence." The room erupted, board members shouting questions, Morrison demanding Beck's immediate suspension, Sandra Liu calling for a forensic audit. Through it all, I sat perfectly still, watching 7 years of careful relationship building crystallize into this single moment of vindication. Beck was escorted out 20 minutes later, his corporate badge confiscated, his access revoked. As security led him past the boardroom's glass walls, He locked eyes with me one last time. I saw it then, the moment he finally understood. He'd thought power came from titles and organizational charts. He'd never grasped that real power lived in the space between people, in trust earned one conversation at a time. Morrison cleared his throat, drawing my attention back to the room. Ms. Warren, we have a more pressing matter to discuss. How do we keep our clients from walking out that door? I smiled for the first time in a week. You start by giving them what they want, which is me. The board voted unanimously. By 5 p.m. that same day, I was offered Beck's seat on the board of directors, along with a compensation package that made my lost bonus look like pocket change. But the money wasn't what mattered. It never had been. We need you to stabilize the situation immediately, Morrison said as we finalized the details. Can you get our clients to stand down? They were never standing up, I replied. They were just protecting their interests. Give me 24 hours. That evening, I made 12 phone calls from my new corner office, the one with Beck's nameplate still on the door. Each conversation followed the same pattern: gratitude for their loyalty, assurance about RX's renewed commitment to relationship-based management, and a personal guarantee that their accounts would receive the attention they deserved. Marcus Barrett was the last call. So, you got what you wanted. I got what was right, I corrected. Thank you for the letter. It changed everything. Cassidy, that letter wasn't a favor. It was a business decision. You've made me 30% returns for 5 years running while treating me like a human being. Not a ticker symbol. That's worth protecting. 2 weeks later, I received an email from an unknown address. No subject line, just a message. You destroyed my career. I hope you're satisfied. LB. I stared at it for a long moment before crafting my reply. Lawrence, you destroyed your own career the moment you confused taking credit with creating value. I'm not satisfied. Satisfaction implies I was seeking revenge. I wasn't. I was seeking justice. There's a difference. P.S. Meridian Group is under SEC investigation for those consultant payments. You might want to lawyer up. I never heard from him again. 6 months later, RX Partners had not only retained every client, but had grown our assets under management by 15%. The board implemented new policies requiring relationship managers to maintain direct client contact, and performance metrics were redesigned to value long-term retention over short-term gains. But the real victory came in smaller moments, like when Patricia Holbrook sent me a photo from her granddaughter's graduation with a note, "Thank you for reminding me that business is personal," or when Jennifer Wu referred her sister's foundation to us, specifically requesting I handle the account. "I only work with people I trust," she'd said simply. On the anniversary of Beck's termination, I found myself in the boardroom where it all went down. The same leather chairs, the same gleaming table, but everything had changed. I was no longer fighting for a seat at the table, I was helping reshape the table itself. Maria knocked and entered with my afternoon coffee. She'd been promoted to senior executive assistant, managing a team of 3. "The Barrett Industries renewal documents," she said, placing a folder on my desk. Mr. Barrett included a personal note. I opened the folder to find a sticky note in Marcus's precise handwriting. "Year 8 of a beautiful friendship. Here's to 20 more." I smiled, thinking back to that morning when my bonus disappeared. Beck had thought he was taking away my reward for past performance. He never understood that my real asset wasn't in the numbers I'd generated, it was in the trust I'd earned. They can adjust your metrics, they can rewrite your KPIs, they can even take away your bonus, but they can never steal the relationships you've built with authenticity and care. In the end, Beck had been right about one thing: this had been about revenge. Not the petty kind that seeks to hurt, but the profound kind that refuses to let injustice stand. He'd blocked my 6-figure bonus, thinking he was putting me in my place. Instead, he'd cleared my path to the boardroom. As I settled into my leather chair for the quarterly board meeting, I thought about everyone who'd ever been cheated by a corporate politician. Everyone who'd had their worth diminished by someone who confused power with position. This victory wasn't just mine, it was ours. And from where I sat now, I'd make damn sure it wouldn't be the last. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in America are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below and let me know your city. I'd love to connect with listeners from across the country. If this story of corporate justice resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or experiences with workplace politics. Have you ever had to stand up to a toxic boss? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments below.